Hello, my name is Emma, and in today's video, I am going to teach you about comparative adjectives. So what are comparative adjectives? They are words we use when we are comparing different things or different people. Okay, so let's look a little bit more into this. I just want to remind you about what a noun is and an adjective is before we begin. A noun is a person, a place, or a thing. So for example, this marker is a noun because it's a thing. I'm a person, my name is Emma, I'm also a noun, okay? Right now we are in a classroom. A classroom is a place, so classroom is a noun. So a noun is a person, a place, or a thing. An adjective is something, or I should say it's a word that describes a noun, okay? So I said before, this is a marker. If I called it a blue marker, blue would be the adjective. Or if I said this is a colorful marker or a dull marker, these are all adjectives to describe the noun marker. Okay, so here are some other examples of adjectives. We can use the word cold, okay? Right now I'm cold. We can use the word hot, that's an adjective. Tall, old, rich, poor. We use these words to describe something, okay? So a lot of the times we like to compare things, okay? We like to compare people, okay? Which celebrity is hotter, okay? Which dress is nicer? In English, we often compare two things. And when we compare things, we need to use comparative adjectives. So let's look at that. So we have some rules when it comes to using adjectives to compare two things. When an adjective, so such as these, are one syllable or one beat, we add ER to it when we want to use it to compare. So let's look at an example of this, okay? Because it's sort of hard to understand unless you actually see what I'm talking about. I have here 2 cups, okay? I want to compare these 2 cups. This cup is old. This cup is new. So when I compare these 2 cups, I add the word ER to the adjective when I compare them. So I can say this cup is older than this cup. This cup is newer than this cup, okay? So let's look at this. What did I do? I added ER to the word old. And I added ER to the word new. So when I'm comparing two things, if the adjective, in this case the adjective is old and new, if the adjective is one syllable or one beat, meaning it's a short adjective, we add ER. Let's look at another example. Oh, this book is very heavy. So I have here this book, The Unabridged Edgar Allan Poe. It's a very nice book, but it's very heavy. And then I have this book, The Hen Who Dreamed She Could Fly. It's a book written by a South Korean author that's really good, but it's very light. Okay, so I want to compare these 2 books. What can I say about these 2 books? How are they different? Well, this book is very long. This book is longer than this book. Okay. This book is longer than this book. So notice we have the word long. This is long. That describes the book. And we add ER, to compare it to this book. Now, maybe I want to talk about this book. I can say this book is shorter than this book. And again, all I need to do is add er to the adjective. So this book is longer, this book is shorter. Let's look at another example. I have a lot of things today to show you. Best part of all, the swords. Okay, these are swords. I don't know if you can see that, but this is a little sword. It looks like something you could put in a sandwich, maybe. This is a much bigger sword. So how can we compare these two? Well, again, there's many things we can say about these two swords. There's many adjectives we can use to describe them. Let's look at the one we have on the board. Let's do, well, this isn't really thicker. We could say longer and shorter with this. We can also say lighter and heavier. This sword is a heavier sword. Okay, it's a lot bigger. It's bigger and it's heavier. This sword is smaller. Okay, notice it's smaller and it's lighter. So what I did there was I just added er, or the sound to heavy to make it heavier. And I added er to small to make it smaller. Okay? So let's do some more practice and talk about different adjectives that are more than one syllable and what we do. Okay, so we've talked about how you can add er, which is pronounced to adjectives when the adjectives are short. What about with longer adjectives? Okay, adjectives that are 2 syllables or more. So for example, we have the word serious. This is 3 syllables. Colorful. This is 3 syllables. Difficult. 3. Popular. Okay, that's also 3 syllables. So when we have longer words that are more than 1 syllable, we use the word more when we want to compare. Okay? So I'll give you an example. I have here 2 ducks, okay? I have this nice wooden duck, and I have this duck that is dressed in, I guess it's a gladiator. So I have these 2 ducks. I want to compare them. So when I'm comparing them, I look at them and I think, which one is more serious? Serious. I think this duck is more serious. It is more serious. Now I want to say something about this duck. This duck is more serious. This duck is less serious. Okay, so we use more and we use less when we're comparing 2 adjectives that are long adjectives, more than 2 syllables, or 2 syllables, okay? What else can we say about these 2 ducks? Well, this duck is very colorful. This duck, it's mainly yellow. It's wearing colorful clothing, but it's yellow. So I would say the feathers on this duck are more colorful than the feathers on this duck. So the feathers are more colorful on this duck. Okay. So let's put these ducks away. Okay, they're just going to swim away. Let's think of some other examples. What about if we're talking about languages? Maybe we're talking about grammar. I think English grammar is more difficult than Spanish grammar. Okay, so here's the word difficult. I think English grammar is more difficult than Spanish grammar. I don't actually know, maybe Spanish grammar is hard, but just as an example. Or maybe I want to compare 2 people. Maybe I want to compare Ryan Reynolds and Ryan Philippe, okay? You might know Ryan Reynolds. I would say Ryan Reynolds is more popular than Ryan Philippe. Ryan Philippe is less popular than Ryan Reynolds. Sorry if Ryan Philippe is watching. Probably isn't, but okay, so that's an example of using these adjectives. One exception that a lot of students find very challenging is that sometimes adjectives that are 2 syllables sometimes have ER endings and sometimes use more. So this can get really confusing for students. For example, friendly. Friendly. Okay, it has 2 syllables, but we would say friendlier. We add ER in that case. So the main rule is if it's 1 syllable, ER, 3 or more syllables, you use more or less. And if it's 2 syllables, sometimes it's ER, and sometimes it's more, and sometimes you have a choice. I know it's a little confusing, but that's just what the grammar is. So now let's look at spelling, because spelling is also important when it comes to comparative adjectives. Okay, so we've talked about when to use or ER, and when to use more and less, when we're describing or comparing two objects and we're using adjectives. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the spelling, because here's where it gets a little bit tricky. Okay, so imagine I am comparing these 2 elephants. This elephant is bigger than this elephant. So even though we pronounce it bigger, when we spell it, we use a bit of a different rule. So I have here the word big, so that's the adjective we're using. And I have the ER, but I've added a second G. So if you notice in green, I've added another letter. Why do I have a second G there? So when we are using comparatives, we need to pay attention to vowels and consonants, because this is going to help us with spelling. So a vowel is A, E, I, O, and U. A consonant are the other letters. Okay, so vowels are these letters, and they have different sounds, and consonants are not vowels. So they're the rest of the letters or the sounds in English. So what happens is when you're spelling, when you're using an adjective and you're making it a comparative adjective by adding ER, you need to look at the word and you need to figure out the last 3 parts of the adjective, so in this case, B-I-G. B is a consonant, so I'm going to put a C. I is a vowel, so I'm going to put a V. And G is a consonant, so I'm going to put a C. When you have consonant, vowel, consonant, you need to add a second consonant or a second letter. So in this case, the last letter, the last consonant, is a G. So when we're making a comparative adjective, we need to add another G. Why is this the case? I don't know. I think it makes English a little bit more complicated, but that's okay. Okay, so this is the rule. I didn't make this rule, but this is what it is. So let's look at another example. We have here the word hot. Okay, so right now I am very hot. I am feeling hotter than my sister. So what I can say is, if I look at these 3 letters, we have H, which is a consonant. We have O, which is a vowel. And we have T, which is a consonant. So because we have consonant, vowel, consonant, I've needed to add another letter. And this letter is the same as the one before it. So I add another T. So bigger, we have 2 G's when we spell it. Hotter, we have 2 T's. And it's because of this consonant, vowel, consonant rule for spelling. Okay, so now let's think about smaller. In this case, if you look at the word small, the last 3 sounds, okay, you get a vowel, and then you get a consonant, which is the L, and you have another consonant, which is the L. So in this case, we don't need to add another letter, okay? Unlike with bigger and hotter, because we have a vowel, a consonant, and a consonant, we don't need to do anything. Let's look at another example. So I have here the word cold, okay? Canada is colder than Mexico, just as an example. So if I wanted to write out this word as a comparative adjective, I would look at the last three letters. We have O, which is a vowel. We have L, which is a consonant. And we have D, which is a consonant. So because it's vowel, consonant, consonant, we can just add ER. We don't need to add another letter. Okay, so just to recap, when we have consonant, vowel, consonant, you need to double up the last letter. If you have something different than consonant, vowel, consonant, you do not need to add anything. Okay, and this might take a little bit of practice, and that's okay. We have a quiz at that you can take at the end of this video where you can practice these skills some more. Let's look at one other spelling rule we have when we're talking about comparative adjectives. If an adjective ends in a Y, so we have happy, heavy, scary. When we turn it into, for these ones, they're two syllables, happy, heavy, scary. These are some two-syllable adjectives that we can use ER on. So when we add ER, we need to change the Y. We change the Y to an I. So we have happy, the Y becomes an I, and then we add ER. We have the word heavy. Again, it ends in a Y. So when we make it a comparative adjective, we change the Y to an I, and we add ER. Let's do one final example for this video. So I have here two monkeys. This is a monkey made out of wood, and this is a monkey made out of plastic. So I want your opinion. Which monkey is scarier? Which monkey is the scary monkey? Okay, is it this one or this one? I think this monkey is scarier than this monkey. So if I'm going to spell out the word scarier, scary ends with a Y. So we change the Y to an I, and we add ER. This monkey is really scary. I hope you're not afraid at the end of this video. I'll be putting this away in a moment. Thank you for watching. I hope you've learned a lot in this video. You can practice a lot of what you learned by taking our quiz at www.engvid.com. There you can actually practice your spelling as well as the different concepts we've covered in this video. You can also subscribe to my channel where we have a lot more resources on grammar, on listening, on pronunciation, on all sorts of different topics. So thank you again for watching, and until next time, take care.